So thank you so much for doing this. I have a couple of questions. So the questions, the way I have them, the first part is the undergraduate experience. And then the second part is your graduate school application process and what you've done and, you know, the selection process. And then also the third part is career sort of graduate school / career options, specifically the career that you're hoping to do with your degree. So let me know whenever you're ready, we can get started.
So my name's Carleigh and I graduated, oh my gosh, 2018? Yeah, 2018 and went straight to grad school, which I think some people I know took a gap year, some people went straight through. I think it's probably best for me personally that I went straight through, just so I didn't lose focus and was able to get those letters of recommendation from professors without calling them up a year later and them wondering who I was. Yeah, I was first generation college student, first generation Coug, and WSU for sure. I mean, not to blow smoke, but was really a great educational experience. You guys are really lucky. It'll give you a boost when you get to grad school. A lot of the stuff you'll learn is like, oh, I learned that in my other class. And it's helpful to have that baseline of information. So then when you are taking classes and you're like, oh yeah, I remember that. And then it just goes more in depth. So that's been a real blessing. Super helpful.
Nice.
Yeah.
So how did you choose psychology as an area of interest?
I took a psych class in high school and it was very broad and kind of went over a variety of things, and I liked it. I think it's super interesting. I think most people who don't even major in it find it interesting. I wanted to know why people do what they do, what makes people kind of develop mental disorders, what makes people choose to do the things they choose to do, and what can we do about it? What can we change? What would have happened if something else was their pathway versus something else? What is the adversity that they experience kind of guide their life trajectory, and figuring out kind of what is helpful in development and what is not helpful. I minored in human development as well. If I could go back, I would have double majored. I know that's a question that a lot of students had, at least when I was there, was do I double major in human development and psych because there's that overlap? I would say yes. I would definitely, if I could have done that when I was an undergrad, I would have double majored for sure.
How do you feel the human development part helped with the psychology major?
Just the overlap of kind of the development and then the mental development in that was just helpful to see how they overlap and how like the cognitive development just while you're growing and how your life experience kind of shapes that, I thought was helpful, and it probably would have served me better to double major and not just minor in it.
Right.
So.
When did you choose to do psychology as an area of interest? Was it something that you decided when you came into WSU, like first year, or did you have previous other area of interest and you changed your major?
I was kind of between human development and psychology.
Gotcha.
And I just felt like, what do you do with human development? I knew I didn't want to be a teacher. So I wasn't sure how that would best serve me. I did work at the WSU Children's Center, and that really opened up, like seeing firsthand kind of families and how their family dynamics kind of play out in the children and how the children acting out. Now I can look back and see like, oh, like when they were acting out, that means like something was going on at home that we as teachers didn't know about or didn't see kind of the whole picture of what was going on. And that's where marriage and family therapists are able to see the way children interact. A lot of the time they're reacting kind of what's going on at home. And you can even see that in how they play, which is super interesting. I'm curious about learning more about it. But when kids kind of are maybe more aggressive in play or more gentle in play, they can kind of act out exactly what's going on, and that's how they process information.
Mm-hmm. So now let's talk about your undergraduate experience or things you've done outside of classroom.
Okay.
Throughout the 4 years that you were here at WSU, what did you do, like activities and extracurricular activities that you participated in?
So I actually transferred in. So I did 2 years at WSU. Again, if you have the 4 years, like you can do a lot more than I was given the opportunity to do just time-wise. So I kind of dove in and was like, okay, grad school, I know I want to do that, so I need to do everything without, of course, overloading myself. So I joined the International Psychology program, the Psychi, and did that my first year, then became president my second year. It looks really good on college apps for grad school. It says, you have a high GPA, you were involved, you're interested in psychology. And that's whether you're doing marriage and family therapy or something even in that field of psychology. It looks really good. I was a teacher assistant, helped out with that, helped grading, helped students with that. That was helpful to see kind of how teaching plays out and if teaching is a route you want to go. I'm not sure if it is for me at this point, but that was a good experience. I joined the Impact Lab, which was the prevention science lab. So not quite psychology, but in that same kind of realm, and learning what a lab entails and how there's so many little details and little pieces. I would recommend joining a lab because that whole world just opens up to, is that something I want to do? Is that not something I want to do?
How did you join the lab?
I guess this kind of plays into another piece. I would highly recommend talking to graduate students at WSU. Can be intimidating, but really they're not much further ahead of you. They're super friendly, at least they were in my experience, and they want your help because they're required to be in these labs and they need those undergrad assistants to help them with the details that all play into that. So I got kind of recruited, honestly, through grad students. They were like, do you want to do this? We're looking for people. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And then I know at WSU it was kind of by credit. So how much time are you willing to give kind of translates to that credit load. I'm trying to think how many credits I did. I think I did 2. Yeah. But, some weeks they didn't have anything for me to do. Some weeks they had more for me to do. So it all balanced out. But a lot of the time you can just ask professors like, hey, are you looking for people to help you out in your lab? And a lot of the time they are. And it can be small things. It can be learning a whole different system that none of your classes are going to teach you. So just getting that more education in how lab works, and it's definitely a lot different from the movies. It's definitely, yes. It's definitely, you're not going to make a discovery right away. I mean, these are a lot of the time longitudinal research that you're only playing a small piece in, but I think it was a good experience.
Yeah, what are some of those roles that you had? Did you do data collection or transcribing?
I think looking back, I think it was they had data collecting and then kind of inputting it into a computer system, and then it would analyze it. going to lab meetings where they were talking about what they were doing and kind of deciding who needed to do what for that week. And it's a good community builder. I know that, you know, if I called up those people now, I think, that, oh yeah, like, well, I remember that, like you came in and you know, sat with us every week. And so having those connections is super helpful. Having them help you by writing letters of recommendation, they'll have no problem doing that because they know you and they know that all the work that you put in to help them.
Right. How other ways do you feel like your relationship with an academic advisor or career counselor helped you with your decision to, you know, go to graduate or even consider graduate school?
I asked a lot of questions. I think don't be afraid to ask questions. That's the biggest thing. Is I would go into my advisor, Shoma, who was mine, and I'd be like, I would ask her anything, any little question. I would pop in and be like, do you have a second? I just have this question, or do you know anything about this school or that school, or, you know, what resources are out there? What are things I can do? What is helpful? What classes are, you know, have students that are harder so that I don't overload myself on a particular semester. I asked a lot of questions. And I would meet with other professors too during their office hours and honestly ask them questions, especially if they're professors that have a say in graduate students who get into the program. That's helpful to ask them, like, well, what do you look for if I'm applying to graduate school? Like, that's literally what you do as part of your job. So what do you look for? What do you not look for? So I talked a lot with Chris Berry about that kind of thing, was kind of like, what do you look for? What was, you know, your interviewing nightmare? So that I don't make that mistake. How do I best be the best interviewee I can be for graduate school?
Yeah. Thank you. So now let's move to graduate school.
Okay.
How did you choose the program that you're into?
For me, location was a big thing. I didn't want to move very far. I didn't want to go far to interview. My program was in the process of being co-amped accredited, which looks really good. You can graduate from an MFT program that isn't co-amped, but it looks a lot better if they are having that accreditation. So they actually became accredited, I think, almost a year ago. So because I was in the program, I know that I'll graduate from a co-amped accredited school. I went to an information meeting they had prior to applying, and they kind of explained everything of how this goes. And it's a 2-year program through the summer. And I was like, okay, good, because some programs I looked at were either only part-time or were 3 years. Some were part-time for 4 years, and I knew I wanted to kind of get in and start using my career, and not being in school for years. So that was a big part for me. I only applied to one school.
Oh, wow.
Don't recommend doing that. For me, it was just, well, I could apply to schools in Seattle, but the cost of living over there is a lot. So I was like, well, I might get in over there, but how am I going to afford to live there off student loans? So I would definitely apply more places if you could. I guess I got lucky.
So how many years is your program going to take?
It's 2 years through the summer. So I graduated in May of 2018 and literally started in June.
Gotcha.
So it was very quick. Like, I had to move up to Spokane from Pullman and just go. Yeah, it was a lot. Yeah, so if you want a bit of a summer, I wouldn't recommend doing that. I was excited, so it worked out for me.
All right. Well, so what was the process like? By that, I mean the application process. Did you have to do GRE?
Yeah.
A letter of reference? How was the process like for you?
So I didn't have to take the GRE, which was also another reason why I applied to this school, because I'm not a good test taker and knew I would have to pay for tutoring and all of that. So that was another reason why I chose that school, where Gonzaga, I know you do have to take the GRE. So I applied online. They needed 3 letters of recommendation. And so I think that's the hardest part, is picking who you think will best support you in that, who will best give you the information that they're looking for. So again, I had Chris Berry write me a letter of recommendation. I knew that he knew what they're looking for, because he's part of the interview process for graduate students at WSU. I think I had Dee Posey. I chose her because I was a teacher assistant for her. And then I think it was Shoma was the third one I used. I talked to her all the time. I would cry in her office. I had a lot of interactions with her. So she kind of saw me through the ups and downs of undergraduate, because it's not easy. It's hard. And then, they had 2 rounds of interviews, and they recommended, if they reached out to you, that you're in that first round, because once they pick. So you might be in that later round of interviews, but if they've already picked the majority, you have a less likely chance of getting in. So I think I applied that December, interviewed February of my senior year at WSU, and then was tortured for 2 weeks waiting to hear if I'd gotten in or not. And it was the only school I applied to, so I was terrified. And then got the email while I was actually working at the WSU Children's Center, and started crying at happiness. I was super, super excited. I was super happy that I kind of had a route to go, because I hadn't come up with a plan B, and that was kind of ruminated in my mind of, oh no, I didn't think of that. Like, what if I don't get in? Then, like, what am I gonna do? So it was a short process, and then it was kind of like, okay, well, I better keep the GPA I have, and I'm starting. So that June. So it happened really fast.
So the application you had application, you did a reference, it had interview process. What else did you have to do? Did they require a cover letter, or?
Yeah, I had to do, that's right, personal statement. Mm-hmm. And that was pretty broad. It's kind of like, why are you interested in this program? What do you think makes you a good fit? It's kind of like a pre-interview. Before the interview is really that paper. I had a lot of people look that over before I submitted it. Kind of like, what do I add? What do I not add? Because it's not like anything you've ever written in undergrad. It's you kind of have to make it concise with a lot of information, not a lot of fluff. So I definitely had a lot of people look that over. And then my CV with basically anything that was even slightly relative to the program and what I wanted to do. So volunteer experience, I volunteered at a probation agency for a summer, little things like that. And my supervisor for that actually was an MFT. So I knew, okay, I can put that on. Working at the Children's Center, lab experience, any presentations I did as the president of Psychi, so that I had that presenter experience to go off of.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you brought up the interview part, because some of the programs that students apply to do require an interview, and we want to make sure that students going into those interviews are prepared. What are some of those questions that, if you remember, that they've asked? Or do they give you like this might be questions that we might ask, or was it just like showed up and you got the interview?
I remember Googling, like literally getting on Google and Googling it, like grad school questions, and a lot of those ended up being the questions. I'm trying to remember what was asked. There was, there was the, harsh question of, why would we pick you over somebody else? And that was that's always a hard question, because you don't want to, be mean about other people that you don't even know are applying. And I remember kind of saying, well, I'm younger, I'm trainable, I'm quick to learn. They asked anything we should know about your life that could kind of get in the way of your learning, because you are going into a therapy realm and nobody's perfect, nobody has it all together. So I think they wanted to know that something would come up, challenges in your life, maybe external, whether internal. And that was a question I was like, oh no, like, did I answer that correctly? Was that, what were they looking for in that? And I think they just wanted to know that, things might come up, because going to therapy school is, being in therapy, essentially. And that does bring up a lot of stuff. You kind of reanalyze your family of origin and kind of why you are the way you are, and your birth order, and how that all plays a critical piece in how you've developed and why you do the things you do. And even, maybe your coping skills, as far as, are you coping well, or do you have unhealthy coping skills? I'm trying to think of, the other questions they asked. I mean, after you're interviewed, you kind of block it all out. You're like, oh man, I don't want to think of it.
I totally know what you mean.
You're like,
one of the concerns that students have, which is a valid concern, is when thinking about graduate school, is the financial commitment that you make as a student, beside the time commitment that you do. Can you tell us a little bit about, fundings that were available to you with the program that you chose?
So there were scholarships, and I was able to get some help with that. So because it's a 2-year, mine personally, I can't speak for all, is a 2-year program that is through the summer, you get the aid for 3 years. So that extra money that isn't going to your credits is kind of your living budget. So it is a commitment. It's hard. It's hard knowing that starting out after this, I won't be making a lot of money, but the more experience I have in the field and moving forward to different jobs and getting extra continuing education credits will be helpful. That's stuff you can market as a therapist. I'm currently doing an extra training in emotion-focused therapy, so that eventually I can work to being EFT certified, is what they're calling it. And if people know what that is, who are looking for therapy, they might be more likely to call me as opposed to somebody else for therapy, or seek me out. But the financial commitment is, I hope it's worth it. Just like undergrad, you definitely have those moments where you're like, wow, like college is expensive, and is this worth it? And I guess I'll let you know if it is. Because I still do have those thoughts of, is this all going to be worth it?
Yeah. Do they have any GA positions or that you get paid while a student? How does that work?
It's very hard to work and go to school because you have to have an internship that's unpaid. So it's a job on top of your school, on top of your homework. But a lot of the time that internship will turn into a job after you graduate. So there's that piece to it. I know there's some people who, will literally bartend on weekends, and that's how they'll get some income. It's hard. You have to live very, very cheaply. And if you have to take out more money, you just kind of do. I think the people who have families and children are at a disadvantage because that just costs more, where if you're just a single person who's maybe always lived cheaply, because you've, gone to high school, gone to college, and not really had a lot of money, and then gone to grad school, you're kind of used to just keeping that tight budget. But some people will extend their program to 3 years. That is an option for mine personally. So then you would take less classes so that you could work longer. But the hard part is, once you start internship, it's a job, but you're not getting paid. So it's a challenge.
Well, let's talk about experience in graduate school. What do you love most about it?
What do I love about it?
Yeah.
Graduate school? Let's see, what do I love most about it? I love learning about myself. I love learning kind of why I am the way I am and how that's going to either hurt me or make me a better therapist, and figuring out kind of, okay, because I'm this way, I might work better with this population versus another population of people. I love learning kind of the biases I have and learning like, oh, wow, no, like this happened to so-and-so and that is why they're this way, and kind of learning to have that compassion for people, which I think most people can only see one side of things and make that judgment. But learning that like this happened to somebody and this hurt them and this affects them for the rest of their life. And kind of learning like different people's perspectives on their life. As MFTs, it's a post-positivist worldview, which is that someone's experience is subjective, but you have to treat them like that is the reality, whether it is or not, but that is the real way they see their life. They may see, their mom was mean to them, or, their mom was hurtful to them. And in reality, maybe that wasn't the case, but they see it that way. So you have to treat it like that is the reality, that is what happened to that person, and meeting them at that person-centered worldview.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What about challenges?
Challenges. Time management is hard. Giving yourself a break, letting yourself, what, like calling it a day, being like, you know what, I need a break. I need to go do something fun. I need to figure out a way to give my mind a break. It is mentally exhausting sitting with people and absorbing everything that they're talking about, what they're sharing, and you know, and actively listening, it's tiring. I think prioritizing yourself is a challenge. Finding ways where you can just kind of brain dump your day, whether that's exercising, whether that's coloring, whether that's, you know, going for a walk. It's exhausting. It's definitely true what they say, that every therapist has a therapist. You need it, because things will come up and you're like, wow, why is this affecting me so much? But it is important that you take care of yourself, because otherwise you're not going to be really helpful to other people.
Right. Well, I'm glad that you brought that up, because my next question was, how do you deal with stress?
Exercise, because you don't think it's a desk job. It's a desk job. You are sitting there and it's tiring. So definitely exercising, going to bed early. It's definitely something. Let's see, what else do I do to deal with stress? I think having days where, you know what, it's Saturday and I'm going to sit on the couch all day. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just watch a show. I'm going to just, and giving myself permission to do that. Talking to other people about kind of what's going on in their life, because a lot of the time it kind of matches what's going on in mine as far as like the stress of school. I try as best I can on Saturdays to not do any work. That's definitely something where I know Sunday like is homework day, but Saturday I am not doing anything. I try to do something fun or something to just get out a little bit, whether that's just going out to lunch. Yeah. And knowing that, you know, Sundays I'm going to do some work. I'm going to kind of catch up on maybe something I missed during the week, get prepared for the upcoming week. Yeah, but stress management is definitely a must. It's hard. And sometimes you have to pick, you know, okay, what thing am I doing, or what is just going to get dropped, and that's just the way it is. It's just going to have to, because yeah, everyone is different. Tips. Sometimes stress management can be using therapy on yourself, and recognizing maybe that you're obsessing over something or thinking too critically about yourself, and recognizing, okay, am I giving myself credit where credit is due? Am I giving myself freedom to maybe not be the best, maybe not try so hard, maybe just accept that this is where I'm at for whatever reason. And in my experience, the professors have been okay with, usually as a class, we'll be like, look, we have something due. It's not going to happen. We'll even say, like, this is not, we got too much going on. We have this in this other class. We have this going on. And a lot of the time they'll be like, oh, okay, you're right. You know what? I give you, you know, a few more days or another week. But I think letting yourself relax. I mean, it sounds cliche, but you know, your body and your mind are connected. So I think doing something physical is helpful. Going for a walk, stretching, going to sleep, not staying up all late. I know some people in my class are like, I got 4 hours of sleep last night. And I'm like, wow, I don't, if I did that, I would not be at school. Not, but I need more sleep, I guess, than maybe other people do. So I think learning about yourself and kind of, you might not be the same as somebody else. So your self-care, whether that's mindfulness, whether that's meditation, kind of feeding yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, even if you don't have a faith-based religion, whether that's, going outside or sitting under a tree or, going and sitting by the lake, having that mindfulness piece. I don't know how much that's definitely become a big thing in research, is the importance of mindfulness and being present with where you're at. Yeah.
Nice, thank you so much. My next question was about research. If you have to do any research for graduate school, the program that you're in right now?
So for mine, last year I had to take a research class, and actually right now I'm in my second research class. And so it's kind of a continuation of what we started. For mine personally, we don't actually do the research, but we act like if we were to do the research, this is what we would do. And that's to prepare you if you do go on to get your PhD, that you have this baseline, and then you can go on and do the research. So ours just had to be related to marriage and family therapy in some way. So could be, focused on children, focused on families, focused on addiction, substance use, and how that affects the family. So a lot like undergrad research, the research class that psych students have to take, it's, you're picking something. I know at the end of this term, I have to present it to some people like I'm going to do it and get that approved, but we're not actually doing it. But I think it'll be helpful if I do go on to get my PhD that I have this base work. I've looked at research articles. I've made a literature review of the research that's out there to prove that this is, a gap in the literature, and I need to, contribute to that in some way. But I think we do have the option to do our thesis, which would require actually doing data collection and all of that. And I think if you're going to go on to get your PhD, that's probably the best option. So we haven't talked too much about actually doing your thesis if that is the route you want to do. But yeah, there is a research piece into it, but
for the license, do you require only an exam, or what is the graduation requirement for your program?
I'm sorry?
What is your graduation requirement for your program beside completing the set of classes they have for you?
We will have an exam after graduation. And it's kind of that licensing exam, because this is something I wish I knew. So when I graduate, I will be an MFTA, which stands for associate, which means that after graduation, I will have 2 years where I need to essentially see a supervisor every year. And then when that happens, the A will get dropped when I submit, like, okay, I've taken this exam, I have so many hours of supervision. So now I think it's to make sure that you're a competent therapist, that you didn't just do an internship and you're free to go see whoever. So making sure that you know what to do if someone's in crisis, that you're not going to get sued for malpractice, because you do have to make sure you have malpractice insurance. Even as an intern, I have to have that in case something were to happen. People can come back and sue you. Everything you say to clients is confidential, but there are cases where a judge will subpoena you and you have to go in and try to not, and you don't want to, disclose confidential information that your clients shared with you, but there are cases where you'll have to. If your client, dies, that's another thing that is really real. And making sure that you did everything you could to prevent suicide, but it is a possibility. And that's hard. But making sure that you're competent enough to continue being a therapist with those supervisors. And I think even after that, it would be important to consult with colleagues and, get their input, because you're all under the HIPAA guidelines of confidentiality. So making sure that you're giving care to people, and even having the discretion to say, you know what, I don't really know what to do with this person, but I think my colleague would have a better grasp on what they're going through or how to best serve them. So making sure that you're being ethical in that way. Super important.
Great. That's the last question, and that is, what is the plan after graduation?
What is the plan after graduation? That's a good question. Well, I think applying to jobs. That is something that has been on my mind lately. I think asking kind of what's in the community, what's in the general area. I plan on sticking in this general area, so that's helpful to kind of start looking now as far as, who's hiring, what population would that look like, what are the options that are out there. I think it's important to have some agency experience working in a public mental health setting, because that is going to be the most intense, the most paperwork, the most challenging, I think. So getting more of that experience and what that looks like before going into private practice. I think ultimately I'd like to be in a group practice. I think I used to hope that I can graduate and just go into a group practice, and you can go into a private practice, but I think getting more of that experience and feeling more confident in yourself is vital to the field. I think getting more experience, doing all of the trainings that are offered, and continuing to see what's out there for jobs, who's hiring, who's not hiring. I think a lot of people kind of jump around a lot the first few years after graduation to kind of find where they fit. So I'm excited. I'm embracing not knowing where I'll be in the summer.
Great. Are there any things that, in a question that I haven't asked, or maybe advice that you have for students?
Let's see. Advice I have for students. I think just being involved, be involved as a student. Don't just go to class. I think getting involved and knowing professors and, making sure that you're not just another face going in and out of that school. I think it's important to be involved. You'll get more out of your experience. I know I did, just being involved and getting in touch with professors. And they're people. They're just other people. And I think it's important that you build relationships with them, because they may be your colleagues someday. Your teachers might be people you work with. You might be a part of their labs. You might be a graduate student at WSU. Yeah, I would say be involved, ask questions, and keep asking those questions. I know, like, I would ask the same question to multiple people just to get a different perspective. I think I learned a lot even calling other schools before applying to get information. Even that phone call says a lot about the program. I mean, if they get back to you, that says something. If they don't get back to you, how they respond to, you know, you wanting to go, you know, visit, or you wanting to take a tour, or wanting to get more information, will say a lot on the program itself.